If you lived in Florida in the 1980s, you experienced a state that was three things at once: retirement haven, crime hotspot, and tourist playground. This was Florida transforming into what it is today, but the pieces had not yet come together. South Beach was still run down. Orlando was becoming the theme park capital of the world. Miami was caught between the glamour of the television show Miami Vice and actual chaos in the streets. But people today do not understand what Florida was during that decade of transition. Theme parks multiplied every year. Retirees arrived by the thousands. Spring break culture went national, and a real estate boom paved over old Florida. Air conditioning ran constantly. Afternoon thunderstorms arrived like clockwork, and a lifestyle was built around heat and humidity. Let us step back into that world. Miami in the 1980s had a reputation that shaped how the rest of the country saw Florida. Miami Vice premiered in 1984 and showed the city as glamorous, with pastel suits and Ferraris. The show's soundtrack, featuring Phil Collins and Glenn Frey, made Miami seem exciting. But real Miami was dealing with violence the TV show only hinted at. The drug trade brought real consequences. The murder rate climbed. In 1981, the medical examiner's office was so overwhelmed they had to rent refrigerated trucks. The Mariel boat lift in 1980 brought 125,000 Cuban refugees in just a few months, straining the city. The Liberty City riots showed how much tension existed. South Beach was nothing like it would become. The Art Deco buildings were decaying, paint peeling, with elderly retirees living in cheap hotels. The neighborhood was run down and ignored. Florida earned its reputation as God's waiting room during the 1980s. Retirees from the Northeast and Midwest arrived by the thousands. No state income tax, warm weather, and affordable housing made Florida irresistible. Entire communities were built for retirees, with age-restricted rules keeping out anyone under 55. These communities had shuffleboard courts, golf courses, and clubhouses. Early bird specials became a Florida institution. Restaurants offered discounted meals between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. Condo developments spread across both coasts. The culture clash was constant. College kids on spring break partying while retirees complained about noise. Families visiting theme parks while snowbirds played golf. Florida was trying to be everything at once. The theme park explosion transformed Central Florida. Disney World had opened in 1971, but Epcot Center opened in 1982. Spaceship Earth, that giant silver sphere, became an instant icon. The World Showcase let you walk through pavilions representing different countries. Universal Studios announced plans to build in Orlando. SeaWorld was already drawing crowds. Every kid in America dreamed of a Florida vacation. Orlando was no longer a quiet citrus town. It was becoming the theme park capital of the world. Local Floridians bought annual passes and treated the parks like their backyard. Before we continue with the beach culture and daily life that defined the Sunshine State, if you are enjoying this, look back at what Florida was really like and want to explore more decades and places, consider subscribing. There are so many more stories about how Americans lived through the times that shaped us. Beach life in Florida meant different things depending on who you were. For college kids, Florida beaches meant spring break. Fort Lauderdale, Daytona Beach, and Panama City Beach became legendary. MTV started covering spring break in the mid-1980s, broadcasting the party atmosphere nationally. Hotels were packed. Beaches were crowded. Fort Lauderdale eventually cracked down, and spring break moved elsewhere. For Floridians living there year-round, beaches were different. Surfing, fishing off piers, and weekends at the beach were normal. Beach access was still relatively easy and affordable. The Keys had their own culture. Key West was still affordable and attracting artists, writers, and people who wanted to live outside the mainstream. Jimmy Buffett's music captured the laid-back lifestyle people associated with Florida beaches. Boat culture was strong. Fishing boats, sailboats, and party boats were common sights in marinas up and down both coasts. Daily life meant living with heat and humidity that required constant air conditioning. Every home had central air. Every car had air conditioning. Stepping outside in July felt like walking into wet heat. Shorts, tank tops, and flip-flops were acceptable everywhere. Neon colors were everywhere in the 1980s, and Florida embraced them. Pastel shirts, bright swimsuits, and sunglasses were part of the look. Hurricane season brought rituals every year. From June through November, Floridians watched forecasts carefully. If a hurricane was coming, plywood went over windows, and batteries and water were stockpiled. Afternoon thunderstorms were predictable. Almost every day, around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, clouds rolled in. Rain poured for 20 minutes, then sunshine returned. Bugs were part of life. Palmetto bugs, large flying cockroaches, startled everyone. Mosquitoes were relentless. The shopping mall became a social center because it was AIR conditioned. Teenagers hung out at the mall. Families spent time at the mall. The mall was where you went when it was too hot outside. Arcades inside malls were packed with kids playing Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and later games like Street Fighter. Television in the 1980s connected Floridians to the rest of the country, but local programming had its own flavor. Everyone watched Miami Vice, even though most Floridians knew it was not accurate. The Golden Girls, set in Miami, premiered in 1985 and became a hit. Local news covered hurricanes, theme park openings, and the ongoing situation in Miami. Cable television was spreading, and HBO and MTV were changing how people consumed entertainment. Food culture reflected Florida's diversity. Public supermarkets were everywhere. Pub subs, those massive sandwiches made fresh at the deli, became a staple. Cuban culture influenced daily life deeply, especially in South Florida. Cuban cafeterias with ventanitas served cafecito, that strong, sweet coffee, all day long. Cuban sandwiches were everywhere. The Cuban influence went beyond food. Spanish was commonly heard. Cuban bakeries sold pastelitos and croquetas. This cultural presence shaped South Florida in ways that went deeper than tourism. Orange juice actually came from Florida. Citrus groves were still common, and you could buy fresh juice that tasted like real oranges. Real estate was booming. Developers bought land, drained swamps, and built subdivisions. What had been wilderness became housing developments. Snowbirds bought second homes. Prices were rising, but still affordable compared to later. Old Florida, the citrus groves and cattle ranches, was disappearing. The Space Coast had its own identity. Space shuttle launches drew crowds who lined beaches to watch. The sound of the engines and the sight of the shuttle climbing made every launch feel important. The Challenger disaster in January 1986 was devastating. The shuttle exploded 73 seconds after launch, killing all 7 crew members, including teacher Krista McAuliffe. Floridians felt it deeply because the space program was part of the state's identity. Florida in the 1980s was a state still figuring itself out. The violence in Miami, the retirees in condos, the theme parks, the spring break parties, and the real estate boom all existed simultaneously. It was cheaper, stranger, and less polished than it would become. You could visit Disney World in the morning and read about Miami violence in the evening paper. For those who lived through it, Florida was in transition. The foundation for modern Florida, the tourism economy, the retirement communities, and the explosive growth was all being built during the 1980s. That was Florida when it was becoming what it is today.